What began as a routine late-night interview turned into one of television's most explosive confrontations. When Denzel Washington walked off the Late Show with Stephen Colbert after the host launched personal attacks that crossed every line of professional decency, the studio buzzed with its usual pre-taping energy as Washington settled into the guest chair across from Colbert. The acclaimed actor had come to promote his latest directorial project, a powerful drama exploring themes of faith and redemption. Nobody anticipated that this seemingly routine interview would erupt into a career-defining moment that left audiences stunned and social media ablaze. Colbert opened with his trademark smirk, but there was an edge in his demeanor tonight that industry insiders would later describe as unusually aggressive. The first few minutes proceeded normally, with Washington discussing his film's production process and the challenges of directing while starring. The audience laughed at appropriate moments, and Washington displayed his characteristic warmth and professionalism. The atmosphere shifted dramatically when Colbert steered the conversation toward Washington's well-known Christian faith. "You're pretty vocal about your religious beliefs," Colbert said, his tone carrying an unmistakable note of condescension. "In an industry that's become increasingly progressive, don't you think your traditional views are, well, outdated?" Washington's expression tightened slightly, but he maintained composure. "My faith is central to who I am, Stephen. It's guided me through my career and my life. I don't see beliefs in love, forgiveness, and service as outdated." Colbert leaned forward, sensing vulnerability. "But you've been criticized for some of your positions, your comments about traditional marriage, your stance on certain social issues. Don't you think celebrities have a responsibility to evolve with the times?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Washington shifted in his chair, jaw tightening in a warning gesture. "I think celebrities have a responsibility to be authentic," he replied carefully. "I'm not going to change my core beliefs to appease anyone." What happened next would be replayed countless times across social media. Colbert's mask of professional courtesy dropped. "Come on, Denzel, you're an intelligent man. Surely you can see how your traditional views might seem hypocritical coming from someone who's made millions in an industry built on creativity and diversity." The studio audience grew uncomfortably quiet. Even the production crew sensed something had gone terribly wrong. Washington's eyes flashed with what producers later described as barely controlled fury. "What's hypocritical?" Washington said, voice steady but steel beneath the surface. "Is sitting here being lectured about my beliefs by someone who claims to champion tolerance while showing none himself." Colbert persisted. "Look, I'm just saying maybe it's time for you to consider that your views might be on the wrong side of history. The world is changing, and frankly, some of your positions make you sound stuck in the past." The insult landed like a physical blow. Washington's warmth vanished, replaced by intensity that filled the studio. Audience members later reported feeling the temperature drop. The wrong side of history. Washington's voice carried decades of experience confronting prejudice and discrimination. "Stephen, I've spent my entire career fighting for dignity, respect, and opportunity. I've used my platform to uplift others and tell stories that matter. Don't you dare suggest that my faith makes me backward." But Colbert, perhaps emboldened by perceived momentum, pressed further. "I'm not attacking your faith, Denzel. I'm just questioning whether someone in your position should be more careful about the messages they send, especially to young people who look up to you." The patronizing tone was the final straw. Washington stood slowly, deliberate, and controlled. Studio lights caught the fury in his eyes as he looked down at Colbert, who suddenly seemed to realize he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. "The message I send," Washington said, voice heavy with decades in an industry that had tried to diminish him countless times, "is that integrity matters more than popularity. Standing for something is more important than standing for nothing." The tension in the studio was palpable. Crew members exchanged worried glances while the audience sat in stunned silence. Colbert, sensing he had crossed a line, attempted damage control. "Denzel, I think there might be a misunderstanding here." "I wasn't trying to no misunderstanding at all," Washington cut him off. Voice commanding, "You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my work, then ambushed me with personal attacks disguised as social commentary." The studio atmosphere had become electric. Camera operators continued filming, knowing they were capturing television history in the making. Colbert's usual confidence had vanished, replaced by the dawning realization that he had severely underestimated his guest. "Denzel, please, let's just..." Colbert attempted to regain control, but Washington wasn't finished. "Let's just what, Stephen? Pretend what just happened didn't happen. You think you can hide behind comedy and claim you were just asking tough questions?" Washington's voice grew stronger with every word. "This isn't journalism. This is an ambush designed to make me look foolish for having principles." The audience sat frozen, witnessing something unprecedented. Many had never seen their typically jovial host so thoroughly outmaneuvered. Colbert's trademark wit had abandoned him entirely, leaving him fumbling for words. "I think you're overreacting," Colbert said weakly. "This is what we do here. We have conversations about important topics." Washington's laugh was humorless. "Overreacting. You just spent the last 10 minutes trying to shame me for my beliefs, suggesting I'm on the wrong side of history and implying I'm a bad influence on young people. And you think I'm overreacting. The power dynamic in the studio had shifted completely. Washington commanded the space with the presence that had made him one of cinema's most compelling figures. Colbert, meanwhile, seemed to shrink in his chair, his usual bravado crumbling under the weight of his guests' righteous indignation. That's not what I meant. And you know it, Colbert protested, but his words carried no conviction. Then what did you mean? Stephen, explain to me how questioning my integrity and suggesting I'm stuck in the past was meant to be respectful dialogue, Washington said, his voice carrying decades of experience dealing with attempts to undermine him. Explain how patronizing me about the messages I send was supposed to be constructive. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the studio crew had stopped their usual behind-the-scenes activity to watch the confrontation unfold. This wasn't scripted television drama. This was real conflict. Live. Colbert made one final desperate attempt. Look, Denzel, maybe we got off track here. Why don't we start over and talk about your film? The suggestion was met with a look of such contempt that several audience members later said it made them uncomfortable. Start over. Washington's voice dripped with disdain. You think you can attack someone's character, their faith, their integrity, and then just start over when it doesn't go your way? That's not how the real world works, Stephen. The veteran actor began removing his microphone, his movements deliberate and final. The sound of the device being unclipped echoed through the suddenly quiet studio like a gunshot. Where are you going? Colbert asked, panic creeping in as he realized the interview was slipping completely out of his control. Washington stood to his full height, towering over the seated host with an authority that filled the studio. I'm going somewhere people understand the difference between challenging questions and personal attacks. Somewhere respect still means something. The audience watched in stunned silence as one of Hollywood's most respected figures prepared to walk away. From what had begun as a routine promotional appearance, Colbert's face went pale, finally understanding that this confrontation would define both their careers in ways neither had anticipated when the cameras started rolling. Denzel, wait, Colbert called desperately, his voice cracking. We can work this out. This doesn't have to end like this. Washington paused at the edge of the interview area, turning back with a look that could have melted steel. Work this out. Stephen, you just spent 15 minutes trying to tear down everything I stand for. You questioned my character, dismissed my faith, and suggested I'm a negative influence. There's nothing to work out. The studio lights seemed harsher now, illuminating every uncomfortable detail. Colbert's usual commanding presence had evaporated, leaving him small and desperate in his oversized chair. I was just doing my job, Colbert protested weakly. The words sounded hollow even to him. Your job. Washington's voice rose for the first time, sharp enough to make everyone flinch. Your job is to ambush guests and attack their personal beliefs. Your job is to create controversy by tearing people down. If that's your job, Stephen, you need a new line of work. The production team stood frozen, unsure whether to continue filming or cut to commercial. This was uncharted territory, a complete breakdown of the careful choreography that makes late-night television work. Colbert made one last attempt. The audience wants honest conversations about difficult topics. I'm just giving them what they want. Washington's response came like thunder. Don't hide behind the audience. Stephen, this wasn't an honest conversation. This was a hit job, and you know it. You brought me here hoping to make me look like some backward relic so you could score points with your viewers. The silence that followed was suffocating. Several audience members shifted uneasily, some staring at their hands, others whispering anxiously to their neighbors. I've been in this business for over 40 years, Washington said, his voice heavy with experience. I've faced real racism, real discrimination, real challenges. I've been attacked by people who had actual power over my career. But what you did tonight, this petty, cowardly ambush is beneath even that. With that, he began walking toward the exit, each step echoing through the silent studio like a judge's gavel. Denzel, Colbert called desperately one last time, his voice strained. Please don't do this. Washington stopped at the studio door, turned and let the camera capture the full force of his contempt. I'm not doing this. Stephen, you did this. You chose to attack a guest instead of having a conversation. You chose controversy over respect. You chose to be small when you could have been great. He paused, letting the words sink in. Enjoy your ratings, but remember, they came at the cost of your integrity. With that, Denzel Washington walked out, leaving a stunned audience, a humiliated host, and television history in his wake. The heavy studio door closed behind him with a finality that resonated through the building. Colbert sat alone, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like a shroud. The audience filed out quietly, many shaking their heads in disbelief, some already pulling out their phones to share the moment with the world. The cameras finally stopped rolling. But the damage was done. Within hours, clips of the confrontation would dominate every social media platform, sparking heated debates about respect, professionalism, and the limits of entertainment. Washington's dignity in the face of unprovoked attacks was widely praised, while Colbert's conduct faced swift condemnation. Advertisers pulled sponsorships, ratings plummeted, and industry insiders distanced themselves from the embattled host. What had been intended as viral content had instead become a career-defining disaster. The confrontation was a stark reminder that in an industry built on personalities and relationships, respect and professionalism aren't optional, they're essential. Washington had shown that true strength comes not from tearing others down, but from standing firm in one's principles under attack. The lesson was learned too late for Colbert, but its impact rippled throughout Hollywood, forever changing how late-night television approaches controversial topics.